We're going to talk a little bit about Adobe Connect and some of the things that I'm still learning. Out of curiosity, how many of you have played around with Adobe Connect? I know several. Yeah, I knew several of you have. So feel free to chime in with things that you've learned along the way, because I'm still very much learning. But this summer, I got an email saying, hey, would you be interested in trying out this new online system that allows dynamic interaction? And I thought I replied in a really fast time. Within 30 minutes, I replied. And I barely squeaked in just to try this out with things. But I was interested because for the past 3 years, I've been doing an online course in summer session 1 on desktop publishing, which uses Adobe InDesign to show students how to develop print publications. And what I've been doing is doing it in more of the traditional static model. So here's your videos, and here's your assignments, and here's the Dropbox, and if you need me, call. And they do, and I've Skyped and texted and phone called and eventually just met some of them, just because and it defeats the purpose of an online class, I know, but that seemed to be the only way to get them together. But that static model seemed to be okay, but it wasn't great. And when you compared it to the traditional classes that we were having in the fall and the spring, there was a whole dynamic that these summer students weren't getting. So I was really interested to see if we could add that dynamic into it. So in the fall, I tried out Adobe Connect in my Research Methods class. Not because Research Methods was a great class to try it out in, but because we used it as a research project. And so we had a focus group because I wanted to ask the students, what's your perception of online classes? What do you like? What don't you like? And then let's do one, and then let's talk again. And they had a lot to say about online classes, and maybe you've had this conversation with your students too. They have a lot of opinions about online classes, and they talked about online classes that they've taken at different universities even while they've been enrolled here. They even talked about some online classes that they have participated in here. And out of 60 students, there seemed to be 3 things that came up consistently. The first thing was that they complained that online classes seem to be more about busy work instead of kind of learning. And I looked back at my own online class, and I could say there's some truth to that, because I was trying to make sure that they were involved in the class, so you have a lot more smaller assignments to kind of gauge their participation with things that maybe doesn't push them as much as if we were in that traditional classroom. The second thing that they talked about was their lack of accountability, or their lack of personal motivation that happens with an online class format. And they were very honest and upfront. They know it's their problem, but it's still a problem. And so they talk about how they'll start and they never finish. They just kind of disappear. And I've had that happen in my online class, and I've had many an advisee come crying. I'm sure you have too. I don't know what happened. I said, well, when's the last time you looked at it? 3 months ago, you know? And so that was their number 2 thing. But the third thing, and this was the most prolific in the focus groups that I did, was that they missed the dynamic interaction between students, but most important, between professor and student. And so I asked them to tell me a little bit more about that, and they said that it wasn't just them knowing the professor, but they wanted the professor to know them, so that if they had a problem, that they knew the professor didn't think they were just slacking off, because the professor knew they were a good student and they were just having difficulty in this one area. And so they were really interested in not just a traditional static online environment, but something that required more interaction, that dynamic thing. And so that's why I was really interested in Adobe Connect, because it seems to offer an opportunity to recreate kind of the classroom environment online. So what I thought I would do is just show you some of the things, and you can ask questions as we go along. You can tell me some things that you've done in other platforms, and we can see if we can find it here. and just kind of see what you think about it. You have to figure out how to invite people to come and be a part of your online environment in Adobe Connect. All right, so at Lee, the way that we get into Adobe Connect is leeuniversity.adobeconnect.com, and then if you have one of the usernames, then you can go on in and be part of this. And so I've already gone on in, and I actually went ahead and developed a meeting for us. And so we can go into that here in just a second. But if perhaps this was the first time you had gone in and you wanted to create a meeting, I love it because it makes perfect sense. You can click New Meeting. And you can name it something that makes sense to you and those who are going to be invited. And then you can just add that to your URL. So if you, for some reason, lose your URL, you have a hope and prayer that you can actually remember enough to get there. I tend to give myself just a small description just so I can remember what it is I was talking about at that time, so I don't have to go and listen to the whole meeting along the way. And then this down here is probably the most important, and that is how you want people to come and join you. And this is the one that I usually use. It's the anyone who has the URL for the meeting can join. It just seemed to make it easier for the students because they were used to following a URL. So you can do that, and then once you have that taken care of, you can go in, and I can then send out invitations if I want to. And you can do it this way. I don't have Outlook set up on this, but it'll take you to Outlook. And so if you already have those individuals in your Outlook, it makes it really easy. I was inviting an entire class, and I didn't have my class in my Outlook. So I just copied that URL, went to WebAdvisor, and pasted it into that mass email WebAdvisor provides. And the students were able to follow that without a problem. So all of that to get us back over here. When students follow that URL, they're going to come to a page, and you're going to tell them just to log in as a guest, and this will be where they end up with us. I have a participant loaded over here. Just to take a look at some of the things that are going on, I've already shared a video, which is what this icon is right here. I can stop my webcam if you want. If you choose for them not to be able to see you, you can stop that. But what that means is that they can see you, and so if you were able to see that, you would see a small picture of me. I found that very distracting when I first started. All those mannerisms you're hoping no one notices. You see them all. Other things. What's also an option is that you can see students, and I'll tell you just a little bit more about that a little bit later, but that's what this second window is right here, is my other half, Christy, is on that computer, and I would be able to see her with things. There's also audio, and so I could connect my audio. I'm not going to because I'll get feedback over here, but I could connect my audio so that they could, of course, hear me as we're going through the process. One thing that I'll show you just under meeting is as you start something, you might want to record it so that later on students can go back and have a refresher. So, students are wonderful in saying, I got it, it's great. And then you give them an assignment and they're like, what did you say again? And so if there's a recording, they have that opportunity to go back in and review it. So you would just hit record meeting, and it's going to ask what you want to call it. And then you'll have this red button right here, which will tell you that it's recording as we go. Things. There are different ways that you can lay this out. I have it just in the traditional fashion. Here in just a little bit, I'll show you another way. But the nice thing about this, and if you're familiar with Adobe products, it's true to Adobe in that you can move things around. So you can just drag and drop however you want to as you go along. What I think is most interesting are these pods, and that's what they call Adobe calls these little icons right here. And it allows you the opportunity to share things and hide things from those who are participating with you. If you look, you can start out with notes. And right now, I didn't have them on, but here they are now. And I don't know if you do this, but oftentimes at the beginning of class I make announcements, and I might actually jot it on the board. It's written in the syllabus, but I'm going to remind them again. This is how you can do this in an online fashion as well. So you can make those announcements. And then when you're done, you can always just hide them so that they were there, the students had an opportunity to see them, and then you can move them out of your way with things. The other things that you can see is, of course, the chat, which we'll talk about in just a second. We'll talk about files in a second as well. Web links I thought was interesting because oftentimes we want them to look at certain web links. And so you can show this. And it will not only take you, but it will take your students to the same web link at the same time so that you're all going to that same web in real time. So it follows the same kind of traditional format that we're used to with things. And then of course you can hide that. But the favorite thing that my students liked was this chat box. And I have to admit I was very unprepared for their love of the chat box. I will divulge some things that I've learned throughout this. This was a brand new environment for me, but it was not for my students. And even though they've not had an online class per se, just like this, they saw the chat box and they started chatting. And I could not rein them back for quite a while. And it had very little to do with our content matter. They were having fun finding out how to change their chat color from yellow to purple, and how to make smiley faces and all those other fun things that you can do with things. So the chat is a very popular tool, and you can control some of this. One of the things that the chat will allow you to do is it will allow you to chat openly, but it will also allow participants to chat privately. Now, when they chat openly, you can see it as well as everyone else in the class. But it also has the option for participants to private chat between one another, or for the instructor and the participants to have a private chat. I decided after that one time to disable that private chat. That could just be my control tendencies, I don't know. But that is an option, so if you want them to be able to talk among themselves, maybe you're doing a breakout session and you want to enable that, that would be an option that you could use. But I tend to disable it when we're in a group setting with things.
So the only way they can communicate with each other is through typing. Is that correct?
Right now.
Okay.
Now, I'll show you in just a minute how you can allow someone to have the floor, so to speak.
Okay.
But right now, if this is where we were at, all they would be able to do would be to type.
Okay.
And everyone would see that.
Okay.
You are able, at the end of everything, if the chat history was interesting to you, if you feel like it kind of captured the content of the course and you want to kind of review that, you can actually keep that chat, and it'll be emailed to you. And so you can look down through there and kind of see their comments, which I did think was very interesting, to see what they had, those aha moments, and where they were like, I don't know what she's saying right now with things. All right, we'll go on up then, and this will answer your question. Right now we have Christy over here as a participant, but Christy doesn't necessarily have to stay a participant. You can offer Christy the opportunity to talk to everyone in the class. as well. And you can do that by, I've already enabled her video so that everyone can see Christy, or whoever that is. But you can also enable her audio. And so when you do this, there will be a pop-up that occurs on her screen, and she can accept it. And then she knows that her microphone is on, and so she can communicate with the rest of the class. And then you can turn that off if you would like to do so. You can also make Christy a presenter, which means we could eventually have her show us documents. So just like I'll show you in a second how we can show documents, this student would be able to show documents as well. And I've used that, that's actually been pretty helpful when in small group situations I would like to see what they're working on for a client and we just can't get our schedules all together. Then we can meet at 10 o'clock and online, and I can see it, and even though we're all in different places, we can all converse together. So that's nice. This right here is probably what you're most interested in, and that is how do I show them content, because that's kind of the whole purpose of online instruction. So if you take a look here, you can share a whiteboard, and this is for those who would really like to just be able to maybe draw something very quickly, or maybe it's math and it's just easier to write it on the board, but you're able to do that. And then when you're done, you can just hit stop sharing, and it'll go back to the other thing. The other thing that you can do is that you can share a document. And what I found out is that when I share a document, it doesn't like Word files. It loves PDFs. So I don't know if you found that to be true, Michael,
Yeah.
but
I only use PDFs anyway.
okay.
So.
I use a lot of Word files, and so I just converted them to PDFs to make this work for me. I happen to have already played around today, so I already had things uploaded. That's a nice thing in that as you're preparing, you can already have things uploaded, so you're not having to search, where did I put that on my computer? You can hit OK. And so that will show up there, and it's going to show up on their computer as well. Along the bottom, you can, of course, zoom in so that they can see it perhaps a little bit better. You're able to use a pointer, so if you want them to note certain things, you can use that to help along the way. So you can do just basic documents. You can also do PowerPoints, which I know many of us use. So I put a PowerPoint just because I wanted to show you something I thought was interesting and I didn't anticipate. You'll see that it's with us, and I can navigate through it just here on the bottom. If you are one of those who has notes connected with your PowerPoint, then you can still see those, and of course note that they don't. So you can actually have your notes right there, so you're not trying to look in all different places for that. What I thought was interesting and was that I thought when I clicked on a link that it would go immediately to that link. In fact, I fussed at my students because they said it wasn't there. I was like, it's right there. Can you not see this? Technology will humble you, won't it? So they actually have to click on the link as well. So you have to make sure and tell them to click on that link. And that's true with videos as well. I'll show you that here in just a few minutes. Because I didn't anticipate that. With everything else loading seamlessly, I just expected my embedded links in PowerPoint to also load things. So when they do that, you have to remind them, make sure that they go back to play with you for a little bit more.
This sounds like that you're actually in real time with them as opposed to, I guess my perception of an online class, since there's no time associated with an online class, we write NRN, well, no room needed, but also there's no time. So a student likes an online class because they don't have the time constraint, but from what you're saying, it sounds like, hey guys, we need to be online at 10 o'clock, or I'm sorry, at 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, and the only difference is that I'm doing this long distance, but it's not a situation of you can just access this content at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. Am I getting that right?
You are right. What I have found just in my talking with students, and I'd love to know what others of you have learned, they want both. They want the ability to do it on their own, but they also want that time to interact with you. So what I'm finding as I'm planning for the spring and then for that summer class is that there will be components that you continue to do on your own. These are the assignments and I want you to do it, but there will be specific times, and it might not be twice a week, it might be once a week, it might be once every 2 weeks, where we get together and I have something that I want us to go over, but it's also a time where we can interact and ask questions and learn from one another.
My entire master's degree was set up in this same sort of system. It wasn't Adobe, but it's a very, very similar program. And so I had class 3 nights a week, but I was at home in my jammies drinking my coffee.
You didn't turn your video on?
No, because that was the one thing we did not have. But it was really a very optimal situation because I had classroom time and I text chatted with people from across the planet who were also in class with me, which was really amazing. But the other benefit was that if there was a night where one of my kids was sick and I couldn't make it to class, it was recorded. So I could go back and listen to the entire class the next day, and I had missed a thing. I really got to see everything, every aspect of the class, including the text chat, which was fantastic.
Right.
But then all of the assignments, you're on your own, you do the Dropbox and drop everything off. And so I felt like it was a really nice blend of classroom time and your own accountability for these assignments and things. So, but that my entire degree was done in the same sort of system, and it was fantastic.
Yes.
You might be addressing this later, Christy, but as far as, do the students only, does each student only see you? Do they see each other? Is there any kind of, other than the text chatting, any other kind of visual contact among students?
It's, you decide how much people see based on how many people you enable their video. And so right now I only have one participant. So I've enabled that person's video. But if I had another participant, my understanding is I could enable that person's video as well. So of course the pictures get smaller, but you begin to see more people. And so you could actually have a visual as part of this, so it's not just the text. The other thing is you can also enable more than one microphone so that multiple people can talk. I've had a problem with feedback when I have too many people talking at once, so that it becomes difficult to hear. So I've tried to limit that to me and maybe 2 others.
Oh, do you have the ability to have people raise their hand?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And
That would be one way of managing that.
that's right. And so it's all right here. She's raised her hand, and I can choose to acknowledge, which is going to give her the floor, so to speak, or I could have just asked her, wait just a second, type thing. And that helps.
When you acknowledge her, does that open up the audio? Or?
It opens up her audio. If it's not already open, it opens that up for her.
So this would be a great way of having meetings even
Yes.
across campus or
Yes.
across the country.
I do accreditation for public relations, and we're kind of spread out all over, and so we did that to try to meet very briefly, and it worked wonderfully.
We've used it 4 or 5 times for IDP faculty training. Even though there are many that are here in Cleveland, there's some that are out. But it makes it convenient for, even if they're on the other side of town. So you're right about the meetings. And
We
even
use
with
it as students, oh, I'm sorry, we use it as students for small group stuff. So when we had to work on a project together, but we were all over the country,
Yeah.
we would just meet in a classroom setting and use the whiteboard and work our things out and decide what we were going to do and then just save all of our work. So it was really very convenient.
Could you have multiple discussion groups going on at the same time?
You can.
Yes.
Real quick, after Christy raises her hand, I want to make sure that I remember to turn off her mic, just in case she forgets to and starts singing to us or something. And you can just disable that audio. But you can come up here to the attendees, and you can go to a breakout room type of session. And you can actually move people to certain breakout rooms. And so you can add them around, and you can check on them and kind of enter their rooms. And they're aware because it's all right here, and you can see them who are in there. So that's a possibility as well.
You know, I teach one of the online CAPS courses, and I've tried to incorporate interview podcasts with practitioners in the field and all, and then first started with audio, and then I started with video, kind of a wrap up for, we have different topics, so the conclusion to one topic. But this would be a great way for them to enter in and be able to dialogue on that topic.
Oh, yeah.
So if we were able to set a time, I really like this.
Yeah, and I like it too because it's really easy to use. You don't need a manual, which is wonderful because who has time to read a manual? Let me show you one of my favorite aspects of this too in the share screen. Because a lot of what I do isn't just documents that I've already created. Sometimes I want to show them something in real time. And I don't think this computer is going to have exactly what I'm looking for. But I can actually share my screen. So in my design class, when I'm in Adobe InDesign, I can have Adobe InDesign up, and I can actually have them walk with me. So I just hit share my screen, and then when I hit desktop, they can see my desktop. They can see my desktop, but it happens within everything else that's going on. So they still see the chat, but you won't see the chat. If I was doing this for my class, I would open up InDesign, and so then I could actually show them how you draw a text box or how you change colors or things like that. I won't fall into bridge. I don't think we could go this. All right. But the only thing that I learned out of that was that when I do that, I can't see the chat because I've lost that. And that frustrated me for a while because I wanted to know what they were saying while I was doing this. But that is something else that's available. I want to show you one other layout. Let's see if we can. It's not letting me do that. My webcam stopped, so I was just resetting it up there. Let's go back here. I wanted to show you a different layout, but it is not allowing me to do that.
Can you create and save a layout?
You can.
Yes.
You can create different layouts within your one session, which is what I was going to show you, is that you were able to do that.
Click the, what looks like that. What is that? Oh, are you?
In breakouts.
Yeah.
There you go.
You need to end them.
All right, so this is one that sometimes I use when I'm going to be showing them something. But also while I'm showing them, I also want to give them step-by-step instructions. So as they're listening, they can also follow along. So this is a discussion layout that I'd already set up. So I would share my screen right here. And then as they're watching that, they could follow along. So if they miss me saying it, they could read it. And they could, of course, chat about it while it's going on. And then this over here, this poll that I put up, is just asking them a question related to whatever it was that we were talking about, and it gives them the opportunity to answer. And everybody gets to see how many people said A, how many people said B. And it allows them to have more interaction with the class. One of the things that I've learned, and I'm sure you're aware of it too, is we fight for their attention, and it's even more prevalent in an online environment, because while we're looking at this, I can't guarantee that they're not, listening to music while they're watching, or I'm just gonna check Facebook really quick, or whatever. So the more interaction that we can provide as part of our online instruction, the more engaged they become. And so using polls, adding notes that they could either return to or come back to, and using the chat as a discussion forum, so asking a question and having them respond to it. That seems to be very helpful as well, and that's just in one of the layouts and things. Has anyone seen anything different? I know you said you had done your master's. Any other ways that they've utilized?
We use the
engagement?
poll frequently, not for this sort of Quizlet idea, but when there was something that we all need to sort of agree upon, like, are we gonna take a break, because we had 2.5 hour sessions, so are we gonna just take a break, or we really only have 40 minutes left, should we just push through? That sort of thing, and then people could say, oh, I really need a 10-minute break, or, whatever, but because you can set them up so quickly.
Right.
Then she would just set them up, and he or she would set them up and ask the question, and we would all sort of vote, and then, majority rules. So we use them a lot for that sort of classroom management things.
And I'm glad you said that, because you can actually prepare them in advance and have several polls already up, and so you can just go through them, so you're not having to try to do it on the fly. They're there, and you can just cycle through them along the way. Anything that I didn't show you that you would love to know, can it do this?
Do you know if you can connect a tablet so that for the whiteboard you can actually write instead of using a mouse?
Oh, so you could, Michael says yes. I have not had an opportunity to
Yes,
do
you
that.
can.
Okay. Because I'm not good with a mouse. But I could do, for like genetics crosses,
Right.
doing that with a mouse would be a nightmare, but with a pen would be much better.
Oh, yes. That's nice. Any other questions about what it can or cannot do?
Have you ever found yourself bogged down where, have you asked students to exchange documents with you?
Via this?
Yes, or do they do the document in the Dropbox? If, for example, a student was doing a presentation and you wanted everyone to see the presentation, would they send the presentation to you and then you distribute it, or do they distribute it from their station?
Okay. I have them do it both ways, just in case. So before our class session, I have them email it to me so I know that I have it. But what you can do is, if Christy is going to be a presenter today, then I can make her a presenter. And when I do that, then her screen looks just like mine, and she can share a document, just like I showed you that you could. And so suddenly we're looking at Christy's document, and she's able to take us through this. Now, she can't change your layout or anything like that, but that way she could show you and take you through her presentation.
And do you have any problems with loading, like it takes a long time and documents get hung up and screens freeze or anything like that?
It depends on the connection, and so yes, I have in some instances where there's sometimes a delay. I was doing it in my office, and I had my computer here and my laptop here, and I would take a drink and put it down, and then I'd go and I'd watch myself take a drink and put it down. So sometimes there's a lag, and then sometimes it's just right on. And so you just have to be aware of that. And I found if you talk in sound bites, so you talk in those small groups of sentences, it helps with that lag if there is a lag. And use the chat to make sure that we're all up and in the same place as well. That's a good question.
Student computer capabilities, they don't necessarily have to have a camera, do they?
They don't. Now, if you want to be able to see them, then of course they would need to get one, but they don't. And they don't necessarily have to have a microphone. They can communicate completely through chat. There was a pod I didn't show you called a question and answer, where they can ask questions and get answers, or vice versa. So they don't necessarily have to have either of those. They have to have an internet connection. Well, in our last few minutes, can I tell you some things that I've learned? I've learned that I need to be two people when I do this. Yeah, when I first started, I tried to do it all by myself, so I was trying to do the class and watch the chat, and then somebody raised their hand, and I think that about did it for me. I was like, how do I answer that? So I have learned, until I get better at it, to have someone there just to help me with logistics. And so my student worker comes in and he says, hey, look at this chat, or she raises her hand, or just to kind of help me manage that. I've also found things that I've learned that it's really helpful to be able to see what they see, so that if there is a problem, I already know about it instead of them trying to explain it to me. Not always possible, and you can, while you're in a meeting, you can change your role to see what they're seeing. So that's an option as well. If you want to see what the participant is seeing, you can do that. But I found if I happen to have my laptop handy, it's nice to have it there with things. Another thing I've learned is to set up rules in advance. Michael's laughing because he got to listen to that first class. Online classes have different norms than regular classes. I should have known this going in, right? Because you know that people interact differently online than they interact in the classroom. And I should have made some announcements that there are people attached to these computers, so please be aware that your comments are to other people. And be aware that this is a classroom situation, so we need to talk about the class content. Most of the things that you're going to talk to your class about on Wednesday, it helps to remind them when you start in that online environment. They're not malicious, they're not mean, they're just used to using it for recreation purposes, and we have to remind them that we're using it for an educational purpose.
One of the rules that we had was, because we're librarians, they said no one's allowed to use text language at all. So you must use complete sentences and correct grammar, even though it's text chatting. So that was one of our sort of, for almost every professor I had, that was one of their ground rules was, you were librarians, we expect you to use complete sentences.
That is great. And let's see, we have about 5 minutes or so. I know, Lewis, you had already brainstormed about some ways you might use it, and I know several of you are already using it. Any ideas that you want to share or bounce off as we kind of wrap things up today?
Now, do we all have access to this, or do we don't as faculty, do we?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.